Morning. How you doing? Nice to see you. It's Friday. It's the 3rd of July, 2026. 4 stories worth knowing this week, plus a new EV Charging Bootcamp episode. EV news this week, 4 stories, 1 bootcamp episode. First up, we've got the government's about to cut its own electric car sales grant, and it's happening in the middle of a leadership scramble. I'll give you the number that you should worry about more than the politics does. Then Skoda's just priced the biggest electric car it's ever built, 7 seats, 390 miles of range, and a price that undercuts what you'd expect. After that, it's EV Charging Bootcamp as usual. Today, we're going to sort kilowatts from kilowatt hours because mixing those two up is quietly costing people money on their home charging. Then the company car tax change that's quietly nibbling at the electric advantage. And some genuinely good news on the money side because used electric car prices have nearly halved in 3 years. Right, let's get into it. The ZEV mandate. So let's talk about that because there's been lots of change on the ZEV mandate recently, and I'm just going to share the right screen for you. So let's just put this graphic up, share this tab instead, and we're going to add that to the stage. Okay. We flagged this one brewing last week while we were away in France. When EVA England wrote to the Transport Secretary warning the government was quietly softening the ZEV mandate. Since then, it's escalated a lot faster than anyone expected. Is the government about to weaken the electric car sales target? Yes. Reports say the 2030 target is being cut from 80% of new car sales being electric down to 50%. Industry body BEAMA says that single change could cost the UK economy at least £2.9 billion and as much as £16.7 billion in a worst case. Let's get the numbers straight first because they matter more than the politics around them. Right now, the rule is called the ZEV Mandate. That's Zero Emission Vehicle Mandate. And it sets out what share of new cars each manufacturer has to sell as pure electric every year building up to 2030. This year, that number is 28%. By 2030, it's supposed to hit 80%. That's the ZEV Mandate UK 2026. That's the rule everyone's fighting about right now. The car industry, through the SMMT, has wanted this watered down for months. They say the targets were set 5 years ago in a completely different economy, and that demand just isn't there to hit them without help. What's new since last week, on the 30th of June, the SMMT went further and called directly on whoever becomes the next prime minister to weaken the mandate. Timing tells you exactly who they think is about to be making that decision. And here's where it gets really properly messy. This is landing in the middle of a government that's mid-collapse. Keir Starmer resigned as prime minister on the 22nd of June. He's staying on as caretaker while Labour picks a new leader. That's looking like Andy Burnham, expected to take over around the 18th or 19th of this month. So you've got a caretaker prime minister, an incoming prime minister who hasn't set out his EV policy yet, and the SMMT publicly calling on whoever's in charge to gut the mandate, all in the same 3 weeks. Interestingly, Andy Burnham's wife works with BEV, one of the large charging networks, and has an interest in that. And I think he's declared that already. But there is some kind of EV alliance there that's visible, not known, but visible. UK Prime Minister EV policy worth watching closely over the next fortnight. And this is the bit that didn't exist when we covered this last week. Here's my problem with the 80 to 50 framing. It sounded like a modest correction. It's not. BEAMA, that's the trade body for the people who actually build the electric infrastructure this all runs on, published new analysis on the 29th of June and did the maths. Best case scenario, every car that doesn't go electric because of a weaker mandate gets bought as a hybrid instead. Even then, the Treasury loses £2.9 billion in VAT revenue because hybrids generate less VAT per sale than EVs do. Worst case, it's not 2.9 billion, it's 16.7 billion between 2030 and 2034. The ZEV mandate cost UK economy. That's the number nobody in the headlines is leading with. And it's not just the Treasury. Charging companies, battery suppliers, manufacturers, they've all put real money into UK factories and UK charging networks on the promise that the market keeps growing on a predictable curve. Water down the mandate and you don't just slow down car sales. You make every one of those investment decisions look shakier. And look, I get the argument that the economy's tight and buyers are cautious. That's real. Salary sacrifice schemes are still the best value in the market. But used EV prices have been all over the place this year. But loosening the mandate doesn't fix affordability. It just tells manufacturers they can miss their own build targets and face fewer consequences for it, which longer term means less choice and slower price drops for the rest of us. There's a knock-on for buyers too. Even if it doesn't feel like it today, manufacturers plan factory lines, battery orders and dealer stock years in advance based on where the mandate says demand has to land. Soften the target and you soften the incentive to keep prices moving down as fast as they have been. Some of the eye-catching lease deals we've flagged on this show over the past few months exist specifically because manufacturers needed the volume to count. And it's worth remembering why the mandate escalates every year in the first place. It was designed to give the whole supply chain from battery plants to charge point operators a predictable curve to plan against rather than a cliff edge in 2030. Chop the target mid-decade and you don't just change one number, you reset the assumption that every other player in this market has been building on. For what it's worth, the underlying demand story isn't actually as weak as the industry framing suggests. EV registrations are still climbing year on year, just not fast enough to satisfy a target that was written 5 years ago in a very different economic climate. That's a nuance that tends to get lost the moment the mandate and weaken end up in the same headline. Here's my verdict on this. If the UK government wants to change the ZEV mandate, fine, do it with a proper review, not a leadership vacuum panic decision. Right now, this is happening because nobody's actually in charge, and that's exactly the wrong moment to be rewriting industrial policy. Watch this one over the next 2 to 3 weeks, because whoever ends up in number 10 is going to inherit this decision almost immediately. Okay, next up, we've got the Skoda Peaq. I'm just going to take that off and run some B-roll on it so you can see the car itself. It's a huge new Skoda that's been all-electric launch. So quite interesting and compared to other cars in this sector. From a government that can't decide on electric cars to a company that's just made its biggest electric decision yet. And I think that's timely. What does Skoda's new 7-seat electric SUV cost, and is it worth it? The Skoda Peaq starts at £51,980 for the entry SEL trim, rising to £58,280 for the range-topping Sport line. It's a 7-seat electric SUV with up to 390 miles of range and rapid charging up to 199 kilowatts. This is the biggest car Skoda's ever built, full stop, electric or not. 3 trims, SEL from 51,980, Edition from 55,130 and Sportline at 58,280. Under the floor, there's an 86 kilowatt hour battery, the biggest Skoda's ever put in anything, and you can have it rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, badged 90 and 90X. Skoda Peaq price, and that's the number that's going to matter a lot to fleet buyers especially. 390 miles WLTP is a genuinely useful figure, not a lab number. Nobody hits it in real life. Even knock off the usual 20% for motorway driving in winter, you're still looking at over 300 miles. That's a proper family SUV that does a school run, a supermarket run, and a trip to see the in-laws in one charge. Rapid charging tops out at 199 kilowatts, which we'll get into exactly what that number means in a minute during boot camp. But in plain terms, that's fast enough and well over 100 miles in the time it takes to have a coffee and a wee. Worth putting on paper, I'm putting this next to what else is out there. The Kia EV9, genuinely the closest rival on paper, starts north of £60,000 once you're into a decent spec. The Hyundai Ioniq 9 is a similar story. So Skoda's undercutting both of the obvious comparisons by several £1,000s, while still hitting 390 miles on the range and keeping physical buttons on the dashboard, which I will die on this hill, genuinely matters when you're driving. I think it's important that you've got buttons there, and it's important that you can use them. We're all used to that and not having to touch screens. It's like a distraction. Skoda Peaq Range UK, 390 miles WLTP, the longest in its class. It shares its underpinnings with the rest of the Volkswagen Group's big electric platform, which means the charging tech, the software, the safety systems, all of that is proven kit, not first generation guesswork. That matters if you're a fleet buyer trying to keep downtime low. The one thing I'd flag, 390 miles is the SEL's best case figure on the smaller wheels. Go for Sportline with the bigger alloys and better trim, and like every EV on the market, you'll see that number drop in real world driving. Nothing unusual there, just don't buy on the biggest number in the brochure. Order books open in September, so this isn't a today's decision. But here's my honest take. For 52 grand, a proper 7-seat electric SUV from a brand people actually trust with reliability, this is nifty positioning. It's priced to compete directly with the big all-wheel drive SUVs from Kia and Hyundai, not against the premium German stuff, and that's the right call. There's also a strategic read here worth flagging. Skoda spent the last few years positioning itself as the value-conscious end of the Volkswagen Group's electric lineup. Cheaper than a VW, roomier than a Seat or a Cupra, badge snobbery be damned. The Peaq continues that pattern at the top of the range, rather than trying to out-premium Audi or Porsche on the same platform. It's a sensible lane to own, and it's one very few manufacturers are contesting properly at this size and price point. Fleet buyers in particular should pay attention to residual value forecasts once those land. A 7-seat EV with this kind of range and a trusted badge tends to hold its price over a typical 3-year lease. My verdict, if you need 7 seats and you've been waiting for an electric option that doesn't cost 65 grand plus, put September in your diary and go and have a look at this new Skoda Peaq, because it's an interesting size car. You can see the interior here amongst some of the footage. It's got the classic big screen, but there are buttons in there rather than just a load of swipes, which is quite useful. It's also got nice looking comfortable seats. And I think Skoda have always come up well on comfort and ability. So maybe sitting on a motorway in one of these is going to be okay. Not bad at all. Okay, so I'm going to move into the bootcamp episode because I want to run through kilowatts versus kilowatt hours with you. Okay, here we go. Kilowatts versus kilowatt hours explained. Right, bootcamp time. Today's one trips up more people than almost anything else in the EV world, and it's costing you some real money without you realizing it. What's the difference between kilowatts and kilowatt hours? A kilowatt, kW, small k, large W, measures the rate of power, or actually large K, large W quite often. A kilowatt measures the rate of power, how fast energy moves. A kilowatt hour, kWh, small k, big W, small h, measures the amount of energy itself, how much fuel is actually in the tank. Your charger's speed is measured in kilowatts. Your battery size and your electricity bill are both measured in kilowatt hours. Think of it like a tap filling a bath. The kilowatt number is how wide the tap is open and how fast the water is flowing. The kilowatt hour is how much water actually ends up in the bath. A wide open tap for 10 minutes might fill the same amount as a half open tap for 20. Same kilowatt hours, completely different kilowatts. Kilowatts versus kilowatt hours EV Charging UK. The mix-up that catches almost everyone out at some point. Here's where it actually bites. Your home charger is probably rated at 7 kilowatts. That's the tap width. Your battery might be 60 kilowatt hours. That's the size of the bath. Divide one by the other and you get roughly 8.5 hours for a full charge from empty. That's not a guess. That's just the maths. 60 divided by 7. Public rapid chargers are a different tap entirely. A 150 kilowatt charger is more than 20 times wider than your home one. But, and this is the bit that trips people up, you almost never actually get the full number because charging speed tapers off once the battery passes about 80% to protect the battery. So going from 10 to 80% might take 20 minutes on a rapid charger. Going from 80 to 100 can take nearly as long as the first 80 did. EV rapid charging speed explained UK. That taper is the bit nobody puts on the big number on the sign. Now, your electricity bill, this is where the two numbers actually meet and where the confusion costs money. You're not billed for kilowatts, you're billed for kilowatt hours. the amount of energy you actually used at whatever price per kilowatt hour your tariff charges. So a cheap overnight tariff at around 7 pence a kilowatt hour, charging that same 60 kilowatt hour battery from empty, costs you about £4.20. Do the same charge on a public rapid charger at around 76 pence a kilowatt hour, and you're looking at over £45 for the identical amount of energy. Same kilowatt hours, wildly different bill. That gap is entirely about where and when you charge, not about the car. Home charging versus public charging costs per kilowatt hour UK. That price gap is the single biggest lever you can control. Quick bit of context on where the kilowatt number itself comes from, because it's not arbitrary. Power in kilowatts is roughly volts multiplied by amps, divided by 1,000. A 3-pin domestic socket is limited to about 3 kilowatts. Technically doable, but painfully slow. We're talking a day and a half for a full charge on a big battery. A proper 7 kilowatt home wall box roughly doubles that speed. And that's why installing a dedicated charger, rather than just running an extension lead out of the window, actually makes a real difference. Not because the electricity is any different, but because the rate it's allowed to flow it at is higher. Home EV charger installation kilowatt UK. 7 kilowatts is the standard single-phase ceiling for most UK homes. One more wrinkle worth knowing, most UK homes only get single-phase power, which caps you at that 7 kilowatt figure regardless of what charger you buy. 3-phase power, which unlocks faster home charging up to 22 kilowatts, exists in the UK, but it's mostly in commercial buildings and some newer housing developments. If you've ever wondered why your mate with the fancier charger is still isn't charging any faster than you, that's usually why. We'll do a full episode on single-phase versus 3-phase specifically, because it deserves its own 10 minutes. Single-phase versus 3-phase EV charging UK, coming in a future UK charging bootcamp episode. On public chargers, the 7 volts times amps maths applies, just at a much bigger scale, using direct current instead of alternating current, which is its own topic, and one we've actually covered before, so I won't repeat it here. What matters today is just this. Bigger kilowatt number on the sign means faster fill, not a different kind of electricity, and your bill is always about the kilowatt hour, never the kilowatts. If you only remember one thing, remember that kilowatts tell you how fast, kilowatt hours tell you how much and how much it costs. Next time you see a charger advertised as 150 kilowatts, that's telling you about speed, not price, and not necessarily the speed you'll actually get once you're past 80%. Next week, we keep working through the series. Actually, I'm going on holiday for a couple of weeks, so it won't be next week, but I will do some pre-records on the bootcamp episodes. Okay, so we're going to go on to company car tax, because that's our next segment today. And how are we doing on time? Okay, my timing's about right. That's good. So company car tax is rising. Back to the news, and this one's a straight money story for anyone on a company car scheme. Is a company car electric car still worth it now? For benefit in kind tax is rising. Yes, comfortably, but the gap is narrowing. Electric company cars now pay 4% benefit in kind tax, up from 3%, rising to 5% next April and 9% by 2029-2030. Still far cheaper than petrol's 30+%, but the direction of travel matters. Let's put real numbers on that, because percentages on their own don't mean much. On a £40,000 electric car, that 1 point rise takes a basic rate taxpayer monthly bill from around £20 to £26.67. Not life-changing, but it's a direction, not a one-off. Company car tax UK 2026, 4% this year, rising to 9% by 2029-2030. Compare that to a petrol equivalent. A higher rate taxpayer on a £48,000 electric car pays around £768 a year in benefit in kind tax. The petrol version of a similar car at a 31% rate costs that same driver just under £6,000. That's not a marginal difference. That's the electric car costing roughly an eighth of the tax. So why is this rate rising at all if the government wants people in electric cars? Simple reason. Benefit in kind tax on EVs has been so low for so long that it's actually become a genuine cost to the Treasury, not just a theoretical one. Company car take-up has shifted hard towards electric specifically because of this tax gap. The government's raising the tax rate gradually rather than yanking away, which is the sensible way to wind an incentive that's done its job without spooking the fleet market that's been driving a huge chunk of EV sales. Benefit in kind electric car tax UK, still a fraction of the petrol rate, even as it rises. There's a genuinely good bit of news buried in here too. Businesses buying a new unused fully electric car before the end of March next year can claim 100% first year allowance against corporation tax. Write the whole cost off in year one, and electricity still isn't treated as fuel for the company car fuel benefit charge. So if your employer pays for your home or workplace charging, there's no extra tax liability on top. That one's easy to miss and worth checking your payroll team actually knows about. This matters beyond individual drivers too. Company car and salary sacrifice schemes have been one of the single biggest engines behind UK EV sales over the past few years. A huge share of the electric car road today got there through exactly this route, not a private buyer walking into a showroom. Employers use the tax gap as a genuine recruitment and retention tool, particularly for staff who'd never otherwise consider going electric on their own. Any change to that gap, even a gradual one, is worth the fleet industry watching closely, not just individual drivers doing their own sum. Nobody on a company EV scheme needs to panic about this, I think. The math still overwhelmingly favours electric and will keep doing so all the way to 2029, 2030. But if you're the sort of person who times a company car order around the tax year, ordering before April rather than after now is a genuinely small saving worth having and not just a rounding error. Okay, we're going to go on to used EV prices because they're dropping, and they have dropped a lot. So I'm just going to do a little piece on that for you. How much? It's good news if you're buying a used EV, by the way, rather than leasing an EV. How much has the average used electric car actually come down in price? A lot. The average used EV in the UK now costs around £20,000, down from roughly £39,000 just 3 years ago. Used electric car sales jumped nearly 46% in 2025 to a record 274,000 transactions. And EVs are now the fastest selling fuel type on the market. £20,000 down from £39,000 3 years ago. It's not a gentle drift. That's roughly half the price in 3 years. Some of it is simply more EVs reaching the used market as the last few years of new sales feed through. Used electric car prices UK 2026, down nearly half in 3 years. And it's not just the average that moved. Entry-level used EVs, think Nissan Leaf, Renault Zoe, are available under £14,000 now, stretched to 10 to 15,000 and into genuinely good cars like the early Tesla Model 3, second generation Leafs, Hyundai Konas, with 200 to 250 miles of real world range and manufacturer warranty still running. Speed of sale backs this up too. Used EVs are taking an average of 38 days to sell, 3 days faster than the market average across all fuel types. That's demand, not desperation. Dealers aren't sitting on stock hoping someone bites. These cars are moving. Worth being straight about why this matters though, because just being a nice, other than just being a nice number, this is the used market doing what the new can't grant and salary sacrifice schemes structurally can't. Because both of those are built around new purchases, and most UK car buyers, 75 to 80% of them, buy used, not new. A falling used EV price curve, a bigger deal for genuine mass market adoption than any single new car incentive. It's also worth saying that this plugs directly into the affordability conversation we keep coming back to on this show. Every grant, every social leasing proposal, every salary sacrifice scheme is aimed at getting more people into new electric cars. The used market is doing this on its own, without needing a single government intervention, is arguably a more important story long term, because it's the route most people actually buy through. If you've been waiting for the used EV market to become genuinely mainstream on price, this is that moment. Do your homework on battery health and remaining warranty like you always should. But the idea that going electric means paying new car money is simply out of date now. Right, I'm going to go on to your questions, but before I do that, I'm going to go back to the live rates just so you can see what's going on there. I'll see this tab instead, and I'll just keep myself small so you can see the lease deals. I updated all the club rates this week and emailed all the new club members. Thank you for joining. There's savings. There are savings going on. There's a new home charging rate that's under 7p per kilowatt hour. So it's a good time to have a look around at those rates and see if you can get a better deal. So a couple of free charging sites have come up as well for slow EV charging. You see Charge Place Scotland there, and I think it was a few Aldi sites have come up as offering free charging at the moment. So have a look out for those too. Okay. Does this weaker ZEV mandate mean electric cars get more expensive? Not directly. Pricing is driven by battery costs and competition, both still falling. But a weaker mandate removes some of the pressure on manufacturers to discount EVs to hit sales targets. So some of the aggressive deals we've seen this year could dry up a little. Manufacturers have been offering strong finance deals partly because they need the sales to count towards their yearly target. Take the pressure off and some of that urgency goes with it. Next, should I wait for the Skoda Peaq or buy something new? If you specifically need 7 seats and can wait until September for order books to open, it's worth the wait. The pricing undercuts its obvious rivals by several £1,000s. If you need a car now, don't hold your breath for early deliveries. New model launches always come with a gap between order books opening and first deliveries, often several months. Factor that into any wait or buy decision. Is 199 kilowatt charging speed actually usable in real life? Well, yes, but only for part of the charge. Remember today's bootcamp lesson, speed tapers after 80% to protect the battery. You'll still see close to that peak number briefly at low battery. Then it drops off steadily as the charge climbs towards full. Judge your car's charging by how long a 10 to 80% top-up takes, not by the headline peak kilowatt figure alone. That's a really good point. Look at the 10 to 80% top-up times. Does the benefit in kind rise change case for a company EV? Not meaningfully, not yet. Even at 9% in 2029 and 2030, electric company cars will still sit far below petrol's 30% plus rate. That rise is worth knowing about, but it's not a reason to switch a company car order back to petrol or hybrid. Where it does matter is timing large fleet orders. If you're choosing between ordering in March or April, ordering before the tax year turns over now saves a small but real amount, and that adds up across a fleet. Last one, is it better to buy a used EV now or wait for prices to fall further? If you need a car in the next few months, buy now. Prices have already fallen close to 50% in 3 years, and 38-day average selling times mean good cars don't sit around waiting for you. Waiting for a further crash isn't obviously the smart play here. The steepest part of the price fall has likely already happened. From here, expect steadier, more gradual depreciation curves close to how the petrol used market behaves, not another cliff edge drop. Keep an eye on prices. The less popular used EVs have sunk a lot, and you can pick up some real bargains, especially amongst the auctions where a lot of fleet cars are coming into auction because they want to get rid of them quickly after the 3-year lease deals end. And there's some really good cars around. So keep an eye out for those. Keep an eye out for current lease deals, and we're showing them on our latest rates. There's that home tariff, EDF Go Electric at 6.99p. Under 7p is good for home charging. The Renault E4 E-Tech Evolution is coming in at £166 a month. And that's a really good price compared to the other ones. And there's new pricing coming in for all these new home chargers as well. Wallbox Plus, Pulsar Plus coming in at the cheapest. And on the rapid charging, Ionity Passport, which is a subscription, but it's cheap. It's relatively cheap. It's 56p per kilowatt hour, but it'll be good fast charging at Ionity stations. You have to pay a monthly fee, but you're going to get good rates on it, and that's good. So if you want the cheapest public charging rates every month, the best lease deals we find, and a weekly digest of what's actually worth knowing, that's the Primetime EV Club. It's free, link in the description, primetimeev.com/club, or just email club@primetimeev and I'll get you added. Quick recap before I go. Watch the ZEV mandate story over the next fortnight. Skoda Peaq order books open in September. And if you're on a home charger, remember kilowatts is speed. Kilowatt hours is what you're actually paying for. That's it for me from this week. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in a few weeks. Thank you. Bye.